where do these prostitutes come from?
Well, in Vegas, they kind of come from all over, but the reality is, all over the country they come to Vegas, right? Because
Yeah.
Vegas is has the supply and demand here is insane, right?
Hmm.
Really, the demand here is really insane.
Welcome to the Cops and Riders Podcast. Your host, Sergeant Patrick O'Donnell, worked the streets in one of the nation's largest police departments for over 25 years. Ride along with O'Donnell and his expert guests as they help you navigate the oftentimes confusing and misunderstood world of law enforcement. O'Donnell and his guests on this show do not represent any law enforcement agency. The content of this show is not meant to be legal advice. If you think you need a lawyer, you probably do.
Hey, Cops and Writers, thanks for being here with us today for another episode of the Cops and Writers Podcast. I'm Patrick O'Donnell, and I'll be your host for today's show. This show is listener supported, so thanks to all of you who keep the show going. I would especially like to thank those of you who are patrons of the show. Your generosity helps pay for the software, equipment, and my time producing this show. Yes, you too can become a patron for less than a cup of coffee or a pint of Guinness. Just go over to patreon.com/cops and writers. If you're interested in actually seeing these interviews, head on over to Cops and Writers. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? Not today. Welcome back, everyone, to the conclusion of my interview with retired Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Sergeant Jenn Benjamins. Jenn Benjamins is a retired sergeant from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department with nearly 22 years of real-world experience in patrol, case investigations, and covert undercover operations. Her interest in undercover work led her to the vice section, where she refused to be limited by traditional expectations. While excelling in female undercover roles, Jenn was determined, and succeeded, in working undercover alongside her male counterparts. She went on to develop a specialized training program within the vice section, implementing policy and conduct department-wide training on vice crimes and related laws. Throughout her career, Jenn worked a variety of undercover assignments throughout Las Vegas, collaborating not only with specialized units such as narcotics, but also with federal partners including ATF, DEA, and FBI. Recognizing a critical need, Jenn founded Covert Blue, where she makes it her mission to provide specialized training for women in undercover roles. Programs that build technical expertise while also addressing the unique dynamics and challenges women face in the field. Please enjoy this very real and informative interview with someone who has lived a life that is found more often in books and TV. Vegas, baby.
Because that's different. Like when you were talking about the girl, that's typical story about a girl going up there and she's cute. That's a very typical enrollment with finding a new girl to bring up to Vice.
Yep.
And yeah, everybody wants to bang her or whatever the deal is, and they thought she'd look cute in a skirt and whatever. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yep.
And I've also had bad experiences where they go up there and they get not Metro Vice. I've never heard that, but from other units is other jurisdictions, I should say, that they go up there and they get grossly hit on, maybe inappropriately touched by the other detectives,
Yep.
and those kind of things. And I'm like, and I get asked advice all the time, Jen, this happened, what should I do? Well, if you say something, you're never going to be used again because you're a snitch and not fun, not, part of the team if you decide to tell on them. Or you can just walk away and say, you know what, this isn't the time for me to go to that unit,
Right.
and then avoid all that other stuff, IA and whatever. So it's
Well,
up to you what you want to do.
hindsight's 2020, but looking back at your career, do you think you should, because how long were you on the street and patrol before you went UC doing vice stuff?
It was '02 to '04, so two
So 2 years.
years.
That's not a
Yeah.
lot of time.
Mhm.
I think, and this is just me, it takes a good
Yeah.
4 or 5 years to really learn the job on the street. It takes,
Yeah.
it's like before, this radio comes over, the call comes over the radio and you're like, oh yeah, I could do that. Oh yeah, no problem. You know
Yeah.
what it's like when you were newer, you're like, never had that one. This should be interesting.
Yeah.
It's like where you're that confident. And I think that
Yeah.
just makes you a better, more well-rounded cop. I think every cop should be doing UC work. I think they should be in investigations. I think they should be doing the gambit because it just makes you a more well-rounded cop. I know that's pie in the sky. Maybe that's just wishful thinking, but I really think that. And for supervisors, same thing. If you're a sergeant, it's like we had guys that, say you're on the tax squad. That's our version of the SWAT team. And it's
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, it's like you become a sergeant, they'll send you to a district. But we've had some that just stayed as, like in SWAT, or like say the detective bureau or whatever. And then, the political winds blow a certain way and you're no longer that guy or that gal, and you get thrown out just to a regular district, and you're clueless. You don't know how to be a boss. You don't know how,
Yeah.
so I think what you did was great, but do you think maybe you should have had more time on the street first, or did it matter?
Honestly, I don't think so. Me personally, I don't think
Okay.
so. There's some women that I've brought up to do temporary assignments, that I was like, oh, this kid's not mature, doesn't have the
Right.
right police smarts, right? Because you do have to have like articulation of
Oh yeah.
law, right?
Yes.
Like pandering. Do you think that pandering, me going out, thinking outside the box, okay, I'm not gonna be in this little soliciting mind. I'm gonna get this chick for pandering. So because I understand the law and I understand what needs to be said, the probable cause to get it, right? So
Right.
what I sometimes I think it really depends on the person,
Mm-hmm.
because and it's really case by case, because I feel like one, if you want to be a UC, which I ended up doing infiltration cases with ATF, I ended up doing cases with IRS, FBI, DEA. So I ended up doing these deep undercover cases. Well, the more that I'm out there, remember your girl with the being on the billboard and doing all these other things. Well, now she's out there, right? And especially now with media.
Oh sure.
Man, you could be out there in a heartbeat. Like you could just be out there doing, some kind of car stop, and someone posts you on, and now you're the cop
Yeah.
that was on, the
Right.
boulevards. So how I look at it is that I didn't, it wasn't a matter of decopping me, right? Because I'd only been a cop for
Right.
2 years. So I didn't have the same mannerisms. I didn't stand, with bladed at people
Yeah,
all the
sure,
time.
sure.
I didn't have a lot of those mannerisms that probably you get, or most likely you get the longer you are a police officer, right? And maybe this being cynical, maybe judgmental, like I went and I didn't have any of that when I went to the undercover world. So I think that in my situation it was perfect for me, of course, because it came out the way that it should have
Yeah.
for 25 years. But I could see when I brought some other girls up, they weren't ready mature wise, they weren't
Gotcha.
ready. uh, and the reality is, I'll tell you the reality of undercover work is, and true undercover work, like doing reversals, buying dope, and all that stuff, is if you look at it, I believe 1% of the police department can pull it off. I've taught 40 women in a room, and I've done this a couple times where I've taught a large group of women, and about 40 a couple times. So I know it's not just one case study that I
Yeah.
did, but a couple times. So I had 40 girls in a room. And what I teach all the time, and I started the training program with Vice, with Metro, about starting this undercover program. So before we even use you, you have to go through this week of training. So the
Which
first
makes total sense
day,
to me. That's a good
now it
thing.
is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's
So
a good thing.
we can
Yes.
avoid we can avoid some of the things that, we talked about.
Right.
So the first training that I teach is basic covert operations. It's taking the uniform off. Now you're in plain clothes and surveillance, and you're doing all this stuff. Well, if I do that out of this 40, I'm going to lose about half the women in the room, because they're like, oh my God, you're taking all my tools away. I'm going to feel unsafe, or maybe
Right.
this isn't me. And we talk about that stuff. Then we talk about vice operations, and we talk about the pimp prostitution subculture, and we talk about how pimps navigate through the prostitution world, and we talk about prostitutes and how they work. And then we talk about prostitution reversals and the activity that goes on in Vice. I'm going to lose another half of that.
Sure.
So I'm already down to 10. Now I talk about dope, and I talk about even firearms. I mean, we talk about a little bit, but what I'm really wanting is just weed out who this is not for. And some people will decide patrol's the way I want to go, or robbery or burglary or wherever.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to be in a covert unit. I want to do investigations, but I don't want to be the undercover. So out of that 40, and this has happened twice and probably more over the years, I will get 3 out of that room who will say, yes, I will sign up and do a reversal. Because reversals are like 101 of undercover work. If you can do that, because they're so quick, they're like, I mean, they could be a 1 minute conversation and you get an arrest.
Explain what a reversal is.
A reversal is when I'm working as the undercover prostitute and my target is John's or Trick's or the prostitution client. So very, very basic undercover work because it's very fast. It's not long term. It's a very big turnover. So you get the arrest, you go back out and you're back out again and you're playing again. So if I have that 40, I'm now down to 3. 3 will sign up, 1 will work out.
Wow.
That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
Because of the job, right? You're talking about sex. You don't have generally you don't have weapons on you.
Right.
If you
Absolutely.
do, you might have something. I mean, at one point I had brass knuckles, a rock, a pen, something like that. Occasionally I had a gun. But occasionally, right? So these girls are just like, nope, I don't feel safe. And then these 3 girls that do it, one girl will be like, I love this. And that's just the reality. And
Yeah.
and if I think about it in the way that I've talked to with some of my ATF friends, who ATF to me is the epitome of undercover work, like a Jay Dobbins or a Lou Velosi, like
Yeah,
those
I
guys.
interviewed Jay. Yeah, amazing story.
Yeah, they would probably tell you the same thing, that everybody wants to be an undercover until you do undercover shit.
Sure.
And then it's not what they think it
Well, it's
is. It's
just
not
like,
what they think
I want to be a cop. I watch TV and it looks really cool.
of
Then
it.
you
Yeah,
actually do it and you're like, okay, this is nothing like I thought it was going to be. But there's a percentage of
yeah,
people that are like, yeah, I can't get enough of this shit. I'd do it for free if they let me. This is awesome.
right.
And the
Yeah.
same thing with UC stuff. It's like you're running. Again, you're running hose. You're doing this operation. You're doing that operation. Yeah, the shine comes off the penny really fast. All of a sudden you're like, yeah, this is like work. This isn't playtime like I thought it might be or whatever. This is
Yeah.
real. And there's real
Yeah.
danger and it's icky and it's depressing. And speaking of depressing, where do these prostitutes come from?
Well, in Vegas, they kind of come from all over, but the reality is, all over the country, they come to Vegas, right? Because
Yeah.
Vegas has the supply and demand here is insane, right? Really,
Hmm.
the demand here is really insane. A lot of people come here and they think it's legal. So they come here and they think, I mean, it's everywhere. It's in the hotels and nightclubs, the streets. There's everything you can think of is here. If you want a trans prostitute, we have an area for that. If you want men that look like men, but they do gay prostitution stuff, but they're straight, we have an area for that.
Yeah.
So it's anything you can find here, even when they had Craigslist was huge when I was in there. Even just basic, like on these dating sites, you can find a prostitute easy
Wow.
in Las Vegas. So the demand here now, where the psychology and the sociology that comes from these girls, their backgrounds and their upbringings, a lot of them come from foster homes, a lot of them comes from broken homes. We have many girls here who grew up in gang infested areas that have then, we call it choose up with a pimp that was
Okay.
also a gangster, and then they end up traveling around the country. And if you have something like the Super Bowl, oh man, or we had NBA All-Star Week. They just come and they work what's called like a circus or circuit. It is a circuit,
It
a
is a
circuit.
circus.
It
Okay.
is a circuit. So the circuit, and then so they'll come. So like big events like SEMA, um, CES, like those big conventions that we have here,
Yeah.
they're gonna come here because they're gonna know there's a big influx of people, especially like big sporting events. You're gonna have an influx of prostitution and an influx of other crimes related to prostitution.
So supply
So a
and
lot of
demand.
these girls,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the supply and demand, but you also when you look at the girls themselves, like I said, foster care, broken homes, their parents might have been prostitutes or pimps, so they're just going with what they know,
Yeah.
right? The gangster, there was back in the mid 90s, there was a huge shift in who were pimps. And back, you had the OG pimps, right? With the gaiters and the hat and the
Yeah.
feather and all that stuff, right? Those guys still exist, but what happened in the 90s is gangsters, like gangbangers, the ones who are robbing and stealing and, acting like gangsters, started looking at these old school pimps and it's like, wow, they're making all this money, yet they're not going to jail. They're not catching cases for what they're doing. So what
Yeah.
they were doing was slinging girls, right? And girls in this environment in the prostitution life are very bad victims. They don't want to be a victim. They don't want to snitch. They don't want to turn on them because there has been a breakdown of their self-esteem, breakdown to bring them back up. If you remember
Mm.
that in the police academy that I
Oh,
was
yes.
telling you about,
Yes,
a
exactly.
breakdown to bring you back up and get you fully immersed in what you're doing, that it's okay to have sex, it's okay to steal from a trick. You're having sex, you might as well charge for it. It's okay to drug them because then if you drug them, you don't have to fuck them. You can just steal all their shit and then
Right.
run away and go give it to daddy, and daddy gets the tricks Rolex watch, his money, his World Series of Poker bracelet, any other value rings,
Right.
valuables, and things
And
like
that
that.
John
So
isn't going to call the cops. He's embarrassed that he got duped like that.
very few call the cops because what happens in Vegas will go to court 30 days later.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
if we catch them,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. I had one guy out here who he got he got he got trick rolled. We call it trick rolled when a prostitute steals your property. Well, he had drug induced trick roll. So
Okay.
he was drugged. She ends up these guys, man, they really need to I don't know if it's about teaching them how to do it right or just telling them not to pick up a prostitute, but so a lot of these guys go into the room and then they put their stuff in the safe. Well, a
Yeah.
girl can turn her phone like this, watch from the corner, watch him put the numbers in the safe.
Oh,
He's
okay.
not drunk. He's drunk. She's
Yeah.
straight because that's the other misconception is that all these girls are on drugs and drinking. They are not. They have to stay straight because if you don't stay straight, you can't make your money. So you're not
Yeah.
going to be impaired while you're with this John, right? The John's drunk. You look, you see him putting in his number. He puts in freaking, this guy put in 80, no, he had 120,000 in cash. He had an $80,000 watch he put in the safe, right? So
Oh,
he
God.
passes out. He passes out. She takes the stuff. Um, so he's on this mission. He's like, she wasn't a prostitute. And I was like, bro, she was a prostitute.
Yeah.
You're not that cute. She was a gorgeous little girl
Yeah.
with, beautiful girl who's here on a real estate convention. Like, are you really buying that? That this was
Right.
like, this is a scenario for you. And so the guy was like, I'm staying here for another week because I'm going to find this girl. And I was
Oh,
like, well,
whatever.
good luck. It's going to
Yeah.
be like a needle in a haystack or even
Right.
worse, right? So this girl ended up, I got his case, and because when I was pregnant, actually in Vice, I ended up moving to the trick roll team because then I can just do investigations. I wasn't in
Right.
harm's way, so I ended up being on the trick roll team. So this guy, I had him for a week, man. Every day we were just like, he's like, "Have you found her yet?" And he's like, "I've looked at this hotel," and he was switching hotels trying to find, like, really just
Was he on the
manic.
strip, I imagine, or was he downtown?
Yeah, he was at Mirage is where it
Okay.
happened. He ended up moving to another place and another place trying to look for this girl.
Yeah.
And no crap, does this girl end up doing the same thing? She ends up stealing a guy's watch. The guy didn't get doped up all the way, but she ends up running out of the Palms Hotel with another guy's watch. And luckily the Palms was on top of it. They stop her.
Yeah.
They take her into custody. I go, oh my God, this is this guy's girl. And we track back down all these other things. She had been
Yeah.
arrested before. He just, it's you give me a description of a pretty, mixed Asian white girl, like fuck, that could be a million of our prostitutes. But Vice is really good. Vice detectives are really good because if I show them a picture, some of them will be like, oh, that's so and so
Oh, wow.
um,
Okay.
who drives such and such, right? Because we deal with the same girls all the time. I mean, it's a lot of girls, but we deal with the same girls. So this girl ended up having a pimp who had this like Lamborghini. I mean, black guy Lamborghini. She was a moneymaker who was 16 years old
Oh, God. 16.
and who had been arrested as an adult because another cop, and it wasn't a vice cop, ended up arresting her. And when you get arrested as a juvenile and you have no record, but they don't know you're a juvenile or whatever, and they just assume you're an adult, they
Mm,
take you to Clark County Detention Center where the adults are booked into, and then now you've established an adult identity
sure, sure,
by what
sure.
you give them,
Yeah.
right? So this girl had been arrested. She had been bailed out at one point. I tracked the video camera all the way to the bail bondsman, saw who the pimp was, and then, didn't get his watch back. That dude actually bought another watch while he was in Vegas, his $80,000 Breitling, and bought another watch because he, had to have the stuff, but he was going to go after her. And I was like, and that guy was I'm not from Vegas, but he had been in Vegas in the 80s doing nightclubs and stuff.
So
And I
he
was
should
like,
have
you
known
don't
better.
understand.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
should
you
have
should
known
have known
better.
better, dude. You're not
So
that cute.
how many, yeah, how many of these prostitutes are hooked on heroin, crack, etc.?
Yeah, hardly any on the
See,
strip.
that's completely different from where I
Yeah.
worked. 99%, well, 90 probably. Where when I first
That's
started,
10%.
it was crack cocaine. It was $5 BJs for a rock, or
Wow. Yeah.
whatever. And it was not Pretty Woman. It was Pretty Scary Woman, really. It was nothing like TV. And these white guys from the suburbs would come down, for these hoes. And I'm like, and of course, we'd stop and like, and now you're gonna go home and you were just with this woman, you weren't wearing a condom, even if you were, you're gonna bring that home
Yeah.
to your wife? That's
Yeah.
disgusting.
That's
Oh
the
my
true
God.
victims of this, right? Is the families because
Oh,
we had one guy out here who, um, I'll go back to the drug thing in a minute, but we had a guy out here who, well, I should start with the hoe. The hoe out here had drugged five guys, and
wow.
they would wake up and realize all their shit was gone. Well, the sixth guy died because he
Ooh.
overdosed. She put too much into it and
What
killed him,
what
right?
was she using? What was she using to drug
I'm
these
not
guys?
sure. I'm
Okay,
not sure what it was. I just
interesting.
know that guy died, which then she ends up getting prosecuted for
That's a homicide.
all
Yeah.
six of them, right? Yeah, for that. So that happened. So now going back to the drugs. Now we have our crack areas where you
Okay.
can get. I wouldn't say inflation has happened. So it's probably a $20 blowjob now.
Yeah.
So you're $5.
Yeah, this is the
But
90s, so yeah, it was
yeah,
$5 back then.
so
Yeah.
this has gone up a little bit. So when I was telling you about the gangsters and the old school pimps, right? And they're prostitutes and they're working the strip, which the strip encompasses the Sahara Hotel, which is down the far north end, and then it goes all the way to like Mandalay Bay.
Yeah.
So these girls are carpet hoes. We call them carpet hoes, which means they work the carpet, which means they work the hotels and the casinos.
Okay.
So these girls, you have to play a part. You can't be cracked out in the middle of a casino. They'll
Right.
kick you out being homeless or being all drugged out and whatever. You're gonna cause attention. Well, also, if I remind you about being straight in the mind. If you're not
Yeah.
straight in the mind, you're fucking with the pimp's money. So
Ah,
pimps aren't gonna get like encourage any of that kind of shit. Maybe you're drinking off duty, maybe maybe you're doing some weed off duty or something, but getting into the harder stuff is not gonna usually happen in that subculture because they don't want you strung out. Plus, when you become strung out, your looks start to go. Well, so what ends up happening is this circle of life, which when you get older, like I can tell you, there's hardly ever, when I was in Vice both times, as a detective and as a sergeant, that I would ever find a prostitute working the casino over 40.
okay.
You just wouldn't find them, right?
Right.
So what I ended up looking at was where are the over 40 hoes, right? Or did they retire? Like where did they go, right?
Yeah, there's no
So
401k, I don't think for that. Yeah,
yeah, they don't like
okay.
collect Social Security
Yeah.
and then, they're living in Florida. But so what I did see was the circle of prostitution of how it goes, right? So
Yeah.
you're young, you're beautiful, you have a pimp, you're going through this whole life of being a prostitute. You're making all that money, you're doing great. And then age does start to, the game wears on you. I mean,
I
you're
would
living in
imagine,
this very
yes.
fearful life, right? You're getting fucked with by the pimps, you're getting by other pimps, you're getting fucked with by your own pimp, you're getting fucked with the cops, you're getting fucked with by Johns. Like, because we've had Johns kill prostitutes, we've had them beat them up, we've had them, sexually assault them when they said no to something, they do it
Sure.
anyways. So you have all these things. So that is a mind fuck. So your body does start to wear, and the game you age fast. The game starts wearing on you. Now you start self-medicating to
Okay.
numb out. That's where you start getting into the heroin, the crack, the cocaine, whatever it is. And alcohol. You
Sure.
start wearing out. Now the pimp goes, get the fuck out of my stable, and you're done. Well, now you're hooked on drugs. Now you
Yeah.
end up downtown around other areas, Boulder Highway. There's some still on Tropicana. We have several tracks out here, and that's where they end up. And if you look back at some of these girls, if I let's say there's a heroin prostitute, she catches a case at Tropicana, I can run her in, I mean, years and
You see the
years ago.
progression of what she went through. Now, do
Yeah, the
most
progression and
are
yeah.
are any of these girls independent? Or
We like to say that a renegade hoe is a dead hoe.
really?
Renegade is what is a term that they use in the pimp prostitution subculture to describe a girl that works independent is a renegade. So in my mind, I would hope 5% maybe on the strip are renegades.
Wow.
Um, but the game is too strong out here, and you have pimps, and that's why when they put me out when I was first up there, they said we're gonna put you out there as a prostitute, but your target is to get pimps.
Right.
So as I walk down the strip, I would get one of these guys that comes up and go, "Hey, girl, are you working?" And one of the big rules in the pimp prostitution subculture is you don't look another black guy in his face, into his eyes. So if I were a real prostitute that had my own pimp,
Yeah.
and I saw another black guy come up towards me, I just put my head down and I keep walking. That's the rules.
Oh, okay.
So me being a independent prostitute, I've just learned how to do it. I need some money for this. I
I'm
want
here
to make
from
a car.
Iowa and I need money for
Yeah,
this
yeah, I'm here from
operation.
Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So I play, that I need support in this
Yeah.
endeavor that I did, right? So I look at them, and initially I may treat them as a trick,
Okay.
and 99.99%, there'll be one that kind of plays along maybe for a little bit, but 99.9999% of that person that comes up to me and asks me if I'm working will then turn it into a pandering conversation because he'll go, I ain't
Okay.
no trick. He'll be insulted by that if I
Oh,
started
okay.
playing him as a trick.
Interesting. Because
So then they'll
I've
start, yeah.
I've got a little story. A good buddy of mine, he was in Vegas for a convention of some type, and there was a gal walking down the strip, and one of his buddies was there, and his buddy comes back and tells him, he says, "You'll never guess what happened." He says, "What?" He said, "I'm walking down the strip. There's a girl wearing a Marquette. Now that's a Jesuit college in Milwaukee,
Hmm.
and these are all Milwaukee area people." And he's like, and the girl's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he says, "Oh, okay." So they start talking, and she's like college age, wearing a Marquette T-shirt. She says, "Oh," he's like, "My daughter goes to Marquette. What a small world, blah blah blah." And she's like, "You looking for a date?" And he didn't understand. He says, "Well, I could be your father. What are you talking about?" And she's like, "No, a date." And he didn't like it. Didn't. Uh, this is Clark. It didn't register with him at first, and then all of a sudden, it's like he just started talking to her, and she's like, "Yeah, this is how I work my way through Marquette. I
Mm,
prostitute in the summer, and then I go to school, in the spring and the spring and the fall." And I'm like,
yeah,
and he's like, "I wonder if that's real."
yeah.
And
It is real, but
wow,
real and far between.
yeah,
It's few
yeah,
and far between.
I would think
Yeah.
so. But what
I mean,
shocked me,
we got a girl one time. She was like, I'm not a real prostitute. I just came here for the weekend. I'm a school teacher trying to get money. And we're like, yeah, but you're with a bunch of known hoes that we know. Like,
wow,
so, and she could have just joined up with them and that's
yeah,
where it was going that night. But, she caught a case anyways. I mean, you can't, it's still illegal no matter
right.
what you're paying for.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, did you ever delve into the world of like real high price prostitution where, like $1,000 an hour or
Oh,
more?
yeah. Oh yeah, we call it in pocket when we engage in the conversation with these girls. Like we would be in pocket with these girls that there was a girl that we had she was beautiful, Asian girl, and we met her at Venetian, And, it's me and my male partner, and we're talking
Yeah.
to her, and she's going on, and I'm just like, "Oh my God, you look really expensive. Like really like you make a lot of money." And she goes, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, what I'm sure we can't afford you, but what's the most you've ever made?"
Yeah.
And she said 10,000 in one night.
Oh,
And I believe her
jeez.
because the story that she told, like she told it with authenticity and really was like serious. And I was like, yeah, I believe that she did that. And the stuff that she did for that, I was like, you deserved every dollar of that
Ah,
money.
did you ever read the book Fast Girl, Susie Favor Hamilton?
Mm-mm.
Read
No.
it. It is
Okay.
so hilarious. She was one of the most high paid prostitutes in Las Vegas. She had a
Mm.
condo on the top of Trump Tower. She was getting $10,000 an hour. She was an Olympic athlete. She was a runner, and
Wow.
she fell. And she said that she twisted her ankle or whatever. She took a dive because she knew she was going to lose.
Uh-huh.
So she did that in two different competitions, and she was married, had kids in Madison, Wisconsin. She was Susie Homemaker, and she led this double life of the high-priced hoe in
Mm.
Vegas. And she
Wow.
blames being she, she was blaming it all on. I mean, she was making a ton of money. And even her
Mm.
husband didn't know. I'm like, yeah, right, my ass.
Yeah,
But
okay.
yeah, exactly. But she's making all this money, blah blah blah. She was living the high life. She's getting all these expensive gifts from all these, she had high priced Johns.
Yeah,
And
regulars probably. Yeah.
exactly. So I don't know if it's still out there. It's called Snoops. It was a web it was like a
Oh yeah.
website or whatever. And the guy who was the head of Snoops calls her and he says, "Hey, I'm going to be running a story on you on Monday about how you're a prostitute in Vegas. Do you want to
Hmm.
meet?" This is like Thursday. He says, "I want to give you a heads up so you can tell your family before they see it on the interwebs."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, you're full of shit, blah." And he's like, "No, I'm gonna do it." So she meets with him, and she's like, "Yeah, oh boy, my world's gonna come crashing." So she turned it around and said, "Well, it's mental health situation. I was misdiagnosed. I'm this, I'm that." But she only came to these revelations after she was busted, after the cash train stopped.
Yeah.
I'm like, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm a victim, I'm this, I'm that. While you're wearing, you have the Coach purse and the Rolex hanging on your wrist that all these Johns have given you. So
Mm.
that's an interesting book. I would highly suggest that. But she wound up on Oprah, and all these women are like, oh, this poor girl, and I'm like, yeah, okay,
Mm.
whatever. So
Yeah,
be it.
there is a point where you like I can have some empathy for them because I teach a little brief section in the pimp prostitution subculture about the African American female and especially in like the hoods, the gang infested area because it's like they get manipulated so bad and they are treated like second, third, fifth class citizens,
Oh,
whatever you want to call
absolutely.
it, that in this subculture because like for instance, the name that they're commonly called are duck. So if you say like I'm driving down the street looking for a prostitute, me and my team, and I'll say, if I have a black prostitute there, I'll say, "Oh, I got a duck right here on the corner of DI and the Boulder Highway." Now, that's a derogatory term. If I remember working that area as a sergeant,
Yeah.
and I rolled down my window one time and I started quacking at this black prostitute that was on the side of the road, and she went off on me, started "fuck you," da, da,
Yeah,
da,
yeah.
like went off because I was like, it's a derogatory term. It's one of those things that I mean, you can call them a bitch all day, like bitch this, bitch that, you bitch da da da. That's nothing compared to calling them a duck, because the opposite, which they call white girls are valued so much more, and they're called swans. So you
Oh,
have like this dynamic in that subculture where they really don't value black females and they overvalue or they value so much more a white girl and they just get used and abused and discarded and just not treated even fairly. I mean, what's fair in that subculture anyways, but
right.
they really it's a very overlooked part of society when you come to human trafficking and you start looking at really the dynamics and how many females are African American, how many are white, and really, in my opinion, the focus for these nonprofits and victim advocacies and stuff like that should really look at empowering the African American female so they don't end up just doing what everything else is going on in their neighborhood, their
Right.
poor neighborhood. Get them out, get them empowered, get them to see that there's so much more than just going with the flow and becoming a prostitute and doing all these other things, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say human trafficking, working with the FBI, et cetera. I would think that would be a big thing there, is it?
It is. It's big, especially when you had girls crossing state lines, when you had
Right.
big pimps that had a lot of money. Because if you really want to get a pimp, you get him for money laundering. If he's
Mm.
really hiding his money everywhere and
Yeah, it's a cash
creating
business.
businesses,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, creating businesses or putting stuff in other people's names to avoid,
Okay. Sure.
all that other stuff. Yeah, that's big. They'll put it in one of their hoes' names, they'll put it in their mom's names. Like a lot of their property and stuff is not generally owned by them because they don't want it taken
Ah,
away because you could say it's not mine, it's my mom's
interesting.
or
Well, let's
whatever.
switch
Yeah.
gears a little bit here. How did working all this undercover stuff with, it's depressing, more than anything else. I think you see another side of society that most people don't see. And it's just like you said, you start hearing, these girls are coming from foster homes, they're coming from broken families. It's not a great life. It's pretty freaking horrible. How did this affect you personally?
Um, I think as far as like this the sad part of this job, I think at one point I was just kind of calloused about it.
Right.
Like it really didn't bother me, like in the sense of like I didn't felt like it was bothered because yeah, I saw some bad stuff. You know, I saw dad prostitute his daughter and then want me to have sex with both of them. Like I was like, this is some fucked up shit. You know,
Yep.
like it was just stuff I just didn't, I was like, I don't know what's wrong with society or humanity, right? That they would allow this stuff, that people operate like this and don't see the problem. But I don't think I've seen a lot of guys, males, become very cynical and very like they treat women like all prostitutes. Like they treat all women like all prostitutes, like a
Yeah.
suspect. Like that whole seeing women in a different light really bugs a lot of the male officers. Me, I just kind of like I don't know, I just didn't feel like it hurt me in the sense of like even I don't know, I thought there was always something wrong with me that I didn't feel really sad or like, oh, this is really horrible. Because I would go back and do undercover tomorrow
Right.
as a prostitute because I'd be getting those bad guys. I'd be getting those girls off the street, and I would have empathy even for the pimps because I mean, they don't know what they don't know until they know. And if you grew up in that environment and that's all you know, that's what you know. If you knew better, you would do better, right? Like that's the way I
Okay.
think. And I think that about a lot of things in life. And so I grew to have a lot more empathy and not sympathy, I
Okay.
think. And so yeah, I don't think it's not that that particular parts of the job affected me. It was the dedication that I had to the job that affected my off-duty life.
Yeah.
That's what really I worked, man.
What did you do to like separate your UC persona or your police persona from like your true self? You got a life outside of work, or maybe you don't. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
Yeah. Well, there was times when I was working deep undercover cases where I would see my kids from 8 in the morning till 8:45 in the morning. And then maybe on some weekends, I would see them, throughout the weekend, or some days I would, I hardly took days off. I didn't realize I was losing time by not selling it back every year. I didn't know that was a thing until
wow.
2015. Then I realized, and that was 15 years in, and I realized, oh
Yeah.
crap, like I would go on vacations, whatever, but I would usually go on my weekends but to the beach or wherever. But I really didn't go anywhere. I didn't go out of the country hardly ever because I worked and I worked to the detriment of my family and my friends. And relationships that I have and all that stuff. And
Right.
so I was like, I always joke about, I would say, no matter how hard you work, no matter how hard you bust your butt, no matter how many arrests you do, the department's never going to put a statue of you in front of
No,
headquarters.
they will not. And
Right?
it's
Yeah.
and what have you done for me lately is really, the key word is like, hey, look, I've done all this stuff in the past, blah blah blah. And it's like, oh, that's nice. What did you do
Yeah.
today?
You're
Good for
replaced
you.
by somebody cheaper, right?
Oh,
That's what I thought.
absolutely.
I was working, and I worked for myself. Like I worked because my drive and the game of it, right? It's the whole
Right.
undercover work is a game, and it's how I wanted to play and how I wanted to win the game with every perp, every suspect that I came into contact with.
So working in Vegas, for as long as you did, you must have come across some celebrities or, some famous people. Any good stories, regarding that?
I wish I had an undercover story about me,
It doesn't have to be
being a
undercover. It
prostitute. I
doesn't
know.
have.
I wish I did though, because some people I know like have like, some great stories. I mean, but Vegas is so amazing because we ended up becoming like a show capital, right? Like
Right.
everybody comes here to do a residency, everybody comes here to do a concert,
Yep.
sporting event, like all this stuff,
Right.
right? So my most favorite celebrity story is Britney Spears.
Okay.
And
Oh
I was
God, she's a
working,
train wreck. Oh my Lord.
but this is probably what started her train wreckedness. So I was working in uniform. I was working her concert when she was big with the snake and the green
Yeah.
outfit. It was like on her thing, and she was with Justin Timberlake. And I remember my boss goes, "Hey, Jen, I need you to go backstage and go to Britney Spears. You're gonna post up at her door. She just got here. You and another guy are gonna be post up there, and then you'll eventually walk her to the stage, right?" So I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's cool." I wasn't really like a big Britney fan, I thought her music was okay, but I went back there. And I can hear her in the back, like warming up her voice, right? Doing,
Yeah.
whatever, right? In front of me, like this scene is like in front of me is Justin Timberlake and then Britney Spears choreographer. And they're like from here to like, yeah, they're probably like 3 feet in front of me because it's a small
Wow.
hallway. And
Yeah.
I'm just like this, and and this is right before Justin broke off and became, his independent singer. So him and this, the choreographer, they're like, oh yeah, and then you should do this, and then you should do this. And I'm like, oh my God,
This
this
is
is
so cool.
totally
Yeah.
cool. I got Brittany behind me. I got Justin in front of me. And then I got this guy, the choreographer. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And they're just like doing all this stuff. And I'm like, is it kosher for me to like pull out my my notebook and have him autograph
Yeah,
it? And I
exactly.
don't know why. I wasn't into them that much, but I thought, oh my God, I'm so close. Like this is like crazy that my job lets me do
Yeah.
this now. And so she eventually comes out and she's like 4 foot something, but she has these heels on. And so she's about my height now. She walks out, they hug and, have a good concert, all that stuff, and they leave. And then they said, okay, you go back to the front. So I got to watch the whole concert.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was like, I kind of became a Britney fan at that point because she
Yeah.
really was a good entertainer at the time. And then like I don't know if it was like a couple weeks later, the drama comes out that allegedly the choreographer was having an affair with Brittany while Justin and her were together. And then I'm like, oh my God, I just saw this whole thing play out in this hallway. Like I'm like, oh my God. And they pretended they were friends. Like just silliness.
That's awesome. I love that. That's really
Yeah.
cool. So
That was probably one of my favorite.
what advice would you give yourself as a new cop? Knowing what you know now, what what advice would you give yourself?
If I was to do it all over again, and the advice that I would give was one, and I tell this to all my women when I teach them, is find a ground fighting skill that you enjoy. Jujitsu, whatever. Like really, and I'm saying this for myself too,
Yeah.
because yeah, I had some scary moments. I didn't go, fist to face with anybody. We had some struggles and some, resisting and stuff like that, but I never got into a full on like drag out fight, luckily in my whole career.
Yeah.
But I tell these girls, stay in shape, and do some kind of ground fighting because you got to keep yourself alive for a little bit until the cavalry comes. That's one of my biggest things. Two, I would tell myself to take those days off and take those vacations while I'm young, without kids. Go to Europe for a week. Don't think that you owe your life and your body and your time to this job.
Right.
Like take the time for yourself. Self-care is probably one of those things I neglected for years. Those are
Okay.
the two big things I would do. Vacation and jujitsu.
Okay, very good. Now, kind of going backwards a little bit, porn slappers. They used to be everywhere. They're not as bad now in Vegas. Is that prostitution or what is it?
The little
Y-
Hispanic guys that
Yeah.
tap the tags. Yeah,
Yep.
they're not out there as much, but what you have is, I mean, social media is blown up. So you can, I mean, we used to, when I was in Vice the first time, we would go through the freaking yellow pages and look, and there would be like 50 pages of escort businesses. I mean, that was like really simple. Then you
Yeah.
have guys tapping, and then they would
Yep.
tape all the cards around the lamppost. And
Yep.
then you have now you still, and I was just there a couple days ago, you have billboards driving up and down the strip of girls to your room and
Yeah.
whatever.
Girls to your room. Yep.
So, so it's funny because I worked in another unit that does regulated and privileged licenses. So we would enforce anything that fell under that umbrella. And so one of them is escort license, which escort license is a privileged license. Nobody gets an escort license. All of those businesses get a different license, which is not regulated. So it doesn't have the same rules. And I think it's called outcall promoter license.
Okay.
And so those guys circumvent the prostitution part. And instead of saying escort, which an escort is not illegal, it's when I always say this, it's when pink parts want to touch is when it becomes prostitution.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like you're good. So if you want, like, you come to Vegas and you're like, Jen, I want an escort to go to dinner with me to a show, which it means you just want a female companion for
Right.
you to go to these places and enjoy the conversation that coming. That's fine. And when it crosses it is when you
There's
do
sex.
exchange of price for a fee or a
Right.
sex act for a fee. So these outcall promoters are still very prevalent.
Okay.
They still pimp will put their prostitute in one of those
Mm.
because it's calls. The calls are coming in, so you can easily go, "Hey, I need you to go to the Bellagio, room 1128. Call me when you get there. Call me every 15 minutes, or I'm going to
Oh.
call you every 15 minutes to check in to make sure it's
Yeah.
not the cops."
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
something
I've
else.
worked one of those. I went and applied for an escort business
Yeah.
and went and worked 2 outcalls for that. And where they don't say nothing. They say you're an independent contractor. When you just come here and you drop the fee off that you owe to us, and right after the call, but you have to call back, call back, call back to make sure I didn't get arrested.
Yeah.
And so you keep calling, and then I come back an hour later and I give them a fee. And so what I would do was I would tell them, oh my gosh, this guy was a 2 pump chump. Like he was done. Here, I'm giving you a tip. All I had to do was blow the guy, and here's a tip. He gave me $1,000. So
Wow.
now what are they accepting? Prostitution money
Right. Right.
because I've declared this is where the money's coming from. I mean, they could easily go, oh, no, wait, we're not taking this because that was prostitution money. You were just to escort. That's not what they do. They know
Okay.
what's going on.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So
So
what
that was a
advice?
fun event, though.
I'm sure. So
That was good.
what advice would you give someone who was thinking about joining law enforcement today? Generic.
Um, to really, if you're thinking about joining, I just had this conversation yesterday with a dad, and his kid is really interested in police work. He thinks it's a cool job. He thinks, he's going to bring him all this money and all this joy and whatever. But the kid doesn't like to do paperwork. He missed the deadline. I'm turning in some paperwork. I'm like, dude, that's the way to get into it. But
Yep.
the thing is, like, if do a ride along, do a couple ride-alongs. And after a couple ride-alongs, you still love it, get into the job. And then when you get into the job, take care of yourself. Balance, make sure, find balance, stay grounded. and be with your people, meaning your family and your friends,
Yep.
especially if they're not cop friends. Find
Absolutely.
friends or keep your friends that are not cop friends,
Correct.
and really find that balance in your life, and you'll be fine 30 years later.
Okay. What do you think about legalizing prostitution?
I don't like it.
Why?
Uh, for one, remember we were talking about the pimps, right? You're
Yeah.
not going to eliminate the pimp problem. You're just going to validate the girls being out there paying a guy who has turned them out, which we call it turned out, a girl who didn't wake up one day and go, I want to be a prostitute when I grow up. They were coerced, they were trafficked, they were forced. And so you're just going to validate that in Las Vegas. Now, I've been to the brothels. I've been to two brothels out here in in Pahrump where it is legal.
Yeah.
And um, it, I remember the first one I went to, I went and just me and my friend had a discussion about my body, my choice, and I was like, no, you don't just wake up and do this and want to. So where are
Right.
we going to go with it? So let's go to a brothel and interview some girls.
Okay.
So 'cause she worked at NPR at one point at the time.
Yeah.
And so we went and we left there like just sad, like
Yeah.
sad that these girls are waiting around. They have to stay there. They're contracted at these brothels. They give 50% of their money to the house.
Right.
After that 50%, you have to pay the rent. You have to pay the doctor's visits. You have to pay for your
It's like,
supplies that you
yeah,
need.
laundry or whatever else. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Like then you end up, who knows, 25% of that money that you get to go back with. Like even if you got 10 grand for the night, and that's amazing if you would get that. But 5 grand and then 2,500. So like really who's winning still? You're a pimp. You're a pimp. That's
Yeah.
what the brothel is just an organized pandering situation. I mean, that's still not, to me, is not good. And the reason why, like, I look at the dynamics of every girl that I've ever talked to about pandering, they have a story that is traumatic.
I can
Is
imagine.
wasn't
Yeah.
healthy, yeah, wasn't a healthy lifestyle, wasn't healthy growing up, mom, dad, whatever. They were molested. I don't know what the statistic is, but it's in the high 80s, 90s that these girls were molested as kids.
Mm.
So it's not so now you look at the relationship between sex and intimacy and sex and devaluing the purpose of it, or
Yeah.
whether you come from a religious viewpoint or you just come from a mental viewpoint. You take out what should be meaning for procreation, for intimacy, for romantic relationships. You just said this is fucking for money.
Yeah. Wow.
It
That,
means nothing.
yeah, that's cold. That's cold. All right. Your company, Covert Blue LLC. Why did you start it and who is it for?
So I started Covert Blue LLC. I was training for the last 10 years and I worked for a couple different companies. And my cousin, who has been doing this for 29 years, it's his 30th anniversary this summer of starting undercover training programs. And he was like, Jen, you just start your own and you can do whatever you want with it. And I said,
Yeah.
great. So I started it, and one of the big endeavors that I have right now is to create the biggest women's undercover and investigations training that has ever been. My goal is to get 150 women in this room, and we're going to talk about undercover operations. We're going to talk about vice and narcotics investigations. Because remember, we went back to that.
Yeah.
If I can train 40, one will make it. But if I can train you to be a great investigator in these crimes and to support your fellow officers, even male narcotics guys. So what I'm doing is in February, I'm having the women's training. This will be huge. It'll be in Vegas. It's going to be, I mean, I really am creating the biggest undercover school that is solely trained by women undercovers or previous undercovers. So
Okay.
solely trained by women, only for women. And so the rest of the training that I provide, I can teach anyone to be an undercover. I mean, any guy, any girl, anybody. I can also teach about investigation. So I was like, let me put together some training and speaking engagements as well for cops all over because my
Yeah.
cousin's retiring. So I'm going to try to take that torch and just continue on with the knowledge that I have, right? Because
Yeah.
you hear me, you see I'm not just a one trick pony. So if I can, I can't keep this all to myself, right?
Right.
That's not beneficial for the future of law enforcement. So if I can share my expertise and my training and my poo-poo stuff that happened and the great stuff that happened, then it's only going to enhance everyone else after me.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of Facebook questions from my Cops and Writers Facebook group. Real quick.
Oh,
Francis Sheldrick asks, no specific question, but I'm interested in hearing the setup for going undercover, how backup contact is handled, what equipment is used, if any, and of course, her most tricky moments. I don't want to give away tradecraft, but how about
yeah.
her most tricky moments, like where maybe the pucker factor was pretty high?
Yeah, there was one case that I had that so I was at Mandalay Bay and I met this pimp and he was talking to me and I was like, "Oh, I don't know why for some reason." And I learned this as I go, I learn what not to do the next time. And I don't know why I told this guy I was like, "Oh, I already made $150 doing a blowjob." And he was like, "Well, give me that money." I said, "Well, hold on, let me go to the bathroom real quick." I didn't have $150 on me.
Yeah.
But the crime at the time was not only did I have pandering, but I also had living off the earnings of a prostitute, which that would be me giving him the money of $150, knowing that it was done through fellatio
Yeah.
or a blowjob, and he would accept it. That would be two felonies, right? So I was like, oh shit. I was like, I don't have that $150. So
Yeah.
I go, let me go to the bathroom and then I'll give it to you. So luckily we were very close to the bathroom. I go inside, I'm texting him like, hey, I need $150. This guy wants $150. I think if we do that, he thinks it's off prostitution earnings. And you're just like trying to do this because I can't spend all day in the bathroom. I
Yeah.
already said this to
How
this
close
guy,
is your
like,
cover team though? How you're never by yourself.
I mean, you're in a casino, right? You can be
Yeah.
anywhere. You could be sitting on the fountain. You could be sitting on a bench. You
Yeah.
could, I mean, very, very close. When we do pimps, we had minimum six guys surrounding me at some point.
I
There
would
might
think
be
so,
some
yeah.
that are out of sight.
Okay.
One's usually 100% one has eye to eye with me
Yes.
that can see. But now I go into the bathroom, right? So I'm going to the bathroom. I'm like, hey, I need $150. So they're scrambling together to put $150
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, it's a bunch of
So
broke cops. Yeah.
yeah, they're like, when you come out, just put your hand behind your back. And I was like, okay. So I come out and I rejoin him and I said, well, let's walk over here. I want to see what's going on. So I put my hand behind my back. They hand me the $150. I pull it out. I said, you still want that 150? And I said, dude, that's all I made from a blowjob. He's like, oh, but if you give it to me, I'm going to save it for you so you won't spend it. And then we're just going to build this enterprise. And he goes on and on
Oh
about this whole
God.
fucking thing that he's
Yeah.
going to do, right? For me, security, teach me how to, charge more money and all this other stuff, right? So I give it to him. Well, at that time, the guy, I had this like not sheer search, but I had a shirt on and my nipples were erect because I don't know, they just were, right? So the guy comes over and he's so happy. I mean, when I gave him that money, he was like on cloud nine. And then he went and he flicked one of my nipples
Oh my
with
God.
his finger, right? And I'm like, hey, I'm like, this fucking mother piece of shit. So
That's
we start going and I give the signal, we go. I knew where we had to go kind of get him into custody
yeah.
safely and not in the middle of the casino. And we did. And I said, that fucking guy flicked my nipple. And they took him into custody with the minimal force necessary use. That's all I can say.
Did you charge him with SA? Did you charge him with sexual assault?
No, we didn't. I didn't.
Oh.
We just did the two pandering,
Oh boy.
I don't think we did. I don't remember. We didn't do SA, I know that,
Yeah.
but might have done battery. I don't know, a simple
Yeah, I would
battery,
have done
but
something because fuck him.
but
That's
we
like
wanted, yeah, fuck that guy. But we
yep.
wanted the two felonies were great. Like, and that's what was great is once I got, and that's the thing about the girls and their pimps and when they actually are victims, because I had a pimp, just as a long story short, I got this pimp. We take him into custody. We arrest him. The next day, I go to the office, and this detective goes, "Hey, you know who that was?" And I was like, "No, who is that?" And he tells me who he was, and he goes, "I've been looking for that guy. He's pandered a 14-year-old."
Oh
So
God.
my felony pandering, only validates that other pandering case that he has against the juvenile, right? Because the juvenile
Right.
can be like, "Oh, she's full of shit. She doesn't know what she's talking about," whatever. It's like, no, the cop that you pandered, you said the same language and did the same thing to the 14-year-old. So
Oh,
that's why I love doing pimps, because if I could put a case on you, even if it got dropped because, whatever, got pled down to whatever or got dropped or whatever, normally it got pled down to like a trespass or something. They would then, as long, like if they got caught up again, I could use that as a prior pandering charge or prior sex trafficking when I got them as a pimp.
Wow, that's something. And then Catherine Kovacic asks, what sort of temperament slash personality traits make a good undercover cop?
Yeah. You have to be, some people might argue with me about this, but humility is one that but the ego really has to be in control.
Okay.
So I know this kind of probably sounds like contradictory, but because I was just talking about this with an ATF guy yesterday about ego and that your ego, my thinking I can do anything. I'm going to win this fight. And that's kind of a conversation, right? So, I mean, you really have to like have it in your mind that you are 10 steps ahead of this guy and you know what those steps are going to be. If he says this, you're going to say this, et cetera, et cetera. You have to be like, your ego has to be quite inflated for you to be confident enough to come out and do these kind of things. If you're meek or you're timid, that's not going to work. It works kind of if you're a trick, but you're playing weak and timid. That's
Right.
where it works. But if you're
Exactly.
legitimately weak and timid, that ain't going to work. Being humble that, and I saw this a lot with some people is like they would do anything to put a case on the guy right then and there. But if I didn't get them right then and there, because me, I was like, oh, I fucked that up. I said something that turned the guy off or whatever. I didn't go and like force an
Yeah.
arrest or force a
There's plenty
conversation that
more
wasn't
people
happening.
to arrest. Yeah, there's plenty of fish
Yeah.
in
And
that
I'm
sea.
like, I'll get him another time.
Yep,
I'll give him another
absolutely.
time. And that was where like, entrapment
Yep.
and the government misconduct, like that kind of stuff I steered away from because I was like, dude, that's not me. I'll get you another day, karma. I'll get you a cop.
Yep.
So
Something
another
will.
cop will get you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So then
Yeah.
she has a follow-up question. What was your most memorable arrest?
My most memorable arrest, and probably the one that got me out of Vice the first time or said I need to go do something else is I just had a new sergeant and we were going to do a reversal at 5 points and it's kind of like this weird road that kind of 5 points, 5 directions. And so I was working as a prostitute. I got out the first time, first run. And this guy drives by and I'm like, oh, it's like a Dodge Magnum wagon. And I walk up to the passenger side and there's a girl in the car and there's him and he kind of looks, he's got a full beard. He kind of looks like a Santa Claus in a way. And
Yeah.
this girl looks like Peppermint Patty, like
Okay.
short hair, freckles. She's wearing a striped bathing suit top and a plaid skirt. And she's just kind of like giggling and kind of like seemed very nervous, right? And so this was a huge track. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, are you ready to party? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And so I was like, did you pick her up, up further on the street? She's like, oh, she's not a prostitute. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm just like trying to figure out what this whole
Yeah.
story
What's
is
the
because I'm
dynamic?
like,
Yeah.
yeah, what's the dynamic here, right? So I keep talking to him and he's like, oh, do you like her? And I was like, oh, she's cute. I'm like, well, what do you want? And he's like, do you want to see her vagina? And I was like, sure. Like I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm thinking, right? Like at this
Right.
point, because nothing really ever throws me off. And he lifts up her skirt. She's not wearing panties, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah. He's like, is that nice? I'm like, sure. Yeah, it's nice. I go, what do you want? And he said, hey, long story short, he says, he wants me to teach her how to perform cunnilingus, which is to go down on her.
Yeah.
And then she's going to go down on me, and then we're all going to have sex. And I was like, all right. I was like, you didn't pick her up earlier? And he's like, no, 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 she's not a prostitute. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, well, how much do you want to pay? And he's like, well, how much are you going to charge? I said, like 150. And he was like, oh, that's too much. And I'm like, well, how much do you want to pay? And he's like, oh, like 80 bucks. I'm like, 80 bucks? I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, so we got to go back to my room. And he goes, okay, that's cool. But do you know where we can get some rock? And I was like, this motherfucker has got what is going on here with a
Right.
rock and whatever. I said, well, if we're gonna smoke, I said, I don't smoke, but I know a guy who's in my hotel. He'll be able to hook you up, but you got to pay for that separate. And he's like, yeah, no problem, no problem. So I was like, cool. So I was like, okay. And I always would, me personally, would always just reconfirm what I have because one, the surveillance team needs to know there's two people in this car, right?
Sure.
Like there's two suspects, possible suspects to get out of there, right? So I go, okay, so $80, we're gonna all have sex. I'm gonna have sex with you, you're gonna have sex with her, you're gonna smoke, you buy that rocket yourself, whatever. He's like, yeah. So I said, okay, cool. So they take him into custody and they take her off, they separate her, and it turns out that was his daughter, his 16-year-old daughter, that he had
Ugh.
been molesting since as far as she could remember as 5.
Oh my Lord.
And so of course we stopped everything. We're like done with our operation.
Oh
And so
yeah.
I took that case on myself, which normally a UC doesn't also become the case agent. But I was
Correct.
like, fuck this shit. This guy's going down for every charge I possibly can charge him. So I arrested him for 2 counts of soliciting. He had a gun and a crack pipe in the car. He dressed her up in these unmatching clothes. I mean, she was pushing, I mean, she was 16, but I was like, I don't know. She could just be looking young, but she was 16. Um, the gun, the drugs, and then we ended up working the whole sexual assault, molestation side
Yeah.
of it.
Right.
So
Right.
he ended up getting, I believe, 40 years. So I had to testify in court on that one. And I just remember the son. Well, one of the other things that was kind of stood out was when I was talking to her, she was like, yeah, this happens all, like maybe once a month.
Ugh.
Normally we go to this black prostitute named Thunder, but she was unavailable today. So now we're here. And I'm like, God just put you in my pathway, girl,
Right.
because,
Absolutely.
let's get this taken care of now, finally. And she said, I know he was arrested before for molesting because my 32-year-old half sister still sends him um, like lingerie pictures of herself
Oh
to the
God.
house. So I look him up and he had an arrest in Florida for molesting that kid years ago. So they ended up getting divorced. And apparently he comes to Las Vegas, marries this illegal woman, is what the kid kept saying. She said, my mom knows about it, but she made him sign a contract saying he won't do it again.
Oh.
And so then, and the contract's in mom's locker at her work. So then I eventually go to court. I testify. This was like the worst, like just the jury was just looking at me like this piece of shit guy, right? And
Yeah.
I'm explaining all this stuff, explaining cunnilingus, and I'm explaining what he did, and she did, and all this stuff. Now he looks like he's probably lost 50 pounds. And so I get into the elevator when we're all leaving, and the son of this guy, because he was 2 years older than the daughter, or a
Yeah.
year older than the daughter, and the son goes, "Look what you're doing to our family. You completely ruin it," to the daughter. And I
Oh.
was like, and the daughter's like, and the mom, she was, the daughter was told that by the dad that the mom was illegal. And if she said anything, that she would send her back to Mexico. And like, it was just like a mess. Like, I was like, I got to get out of ICE for a minute and go do
Oh
something
hell
else.
yes. That's just
Yeah,
disgusting.
that was just like the most, I mean, I don't sleep at night. I was like up, and then sexual assault had to get involved as well because they
Sure.
had to go even further to what we
Oh,
could have done.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was a
poor kid.
mess. It was just so, I hope the kid's fine, but that son was messed up
Yeah.
too.
The
Like
whole
he
thing's
didn't,
messed up. I mean, yeah,
the
I
whole
mean,
thing's messed
technically,
up.
yeah.
Yeah, like the mom's messed up. Like it was just bad. And but the thing that was worse about it was that kid was so, like, she opened right up. It's not like it's very hard to get a kid to start opening up and being
Right.
trusting. She opened right up and she's like, "No, we do this all the time. I don't smoke the crack though." And I was like, "Okay, well, I believe you." But she's like, "But I do this and that, and we've been doing this for years." And I'm just like,
Ugh.
this kid's like, I mean, the kid could easily go back. She could be a prostitute right now because
Right.
that whole sex
How
is not valued the same
how do
way.
you go back to normal after a life of that? Or how you don't know what normal is. You think that is normal. If that's
Yeah.
your
Well,
life, you don't know any
yeah.
different.
You don't know what you don't know until you know. And then
Right.
if you know better, you can do better.
Wow.
And maybe, after maybe hopefully she got some therapy and some other stuff that went on, and to not put the blame on herself for the things that happened. And
Yes.
and he ended up telling them that he had cancer. That's why he lost 50 pounds. And
Oh, okay.
because he was fucked, because when you got a cop that literally witnessed, I mean, essentially the molestation, right?
Right,
Because he was
absolutely.
telling me
Yeah.
to molest her,
Oh,
and you're fucked.
yeah.
You know,
You're going to be going away for a while. Yeah,
like
and rightfully so.
finally, yeah,
Yeah.
you're done.
Oh, God. All right. On that cheery note, uh, it's been so much fun talking to you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you.
How can people contact you and learn more about Covert Blue LLC and any other projects you have going on?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, Covert Blue LLC. I do only do trainings right now for law enforcement. I'm going to be working on a private security instruction training soon, so they can be aware of the pimp prostitution subculture. I'm on Instagram at Covert Blue LLC. You can find me on Instagram. That I really just post things going on in
Okay.
our trainings. So yeah, visit there.
All right. Thank you again. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Welcome back, everyone, for the conclusion of my interview with retired Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Sergeant Jenn Benjamins. Thank you, Jen, for sharing your amazing story from your career in Sin City, Las Vegas. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Cops and Riders podcast. If you haven't done so yet, could you take a minute and rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? If you have already, thank you. As always, thank you for all of your support, and, of course, let's be careful out there.